Today, millions of people all across America are building a life in recovery from addiction and mental illness,
helping themselves and helping each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. I am back. Bad food cannot keep me down. Oh, man. It's good to be back. A lot happened last night. We had the first round of the NBA draft, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I had a blast. Zachary Richichet going number 1 overall to the Atlanta Hawks. That was interesting. I'm going to talk about that pick a little bit later on in the show. But we got to start local. We have to talk about Zach Edey going 9th overall to the Grizzlies. And, of course, we also have to get into Khalil Ware of the Indiana Hoosiers going 15th overall, just barely making it outside of the lottery to the Miami Heat. Can't wait. I'm excited. So let's start with Zach Edey. He goes 9th. There have been a lot of questions around Zach Edey, and there are going to continue to be questions around Zach Edey until we see him play in an actual NBA game. When it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm having Parker Flemming on a little later on in the show. He writes a Substack about the Grizzlies. He lives in Memphis. He has a great pulse of what's going on down there, so he's going to join the show coming up at 11. And I'm excited to talk to him. But when I saw the pick, first of all, wasn't super surprised. I was surprised that the Grizzlies didn't trade up to try to draft Donovan Clingan. They decided to stay put and draft Edey at 9. That's cool. On paper, Zach Edey fits what the Grizzlies need. The Grizzlies need a backup big. They need a guy who can play alongside Jaren Jackson Jr., who's probably a little bit more of a power forward than he is a center. You know, Zach Edey kind of checks those boxes. With that being said, I think the Grizzlies would have been better off drafting a more athletic player. With that being said, I don't mind the pick. I think that Zach Edey can and will be a decent player playing in Memphis alongside John Morant and Desmond Bane and the rest of those guys. What I would not do is call this one of, quote, the worst picks in NBA history like Kristen Peak of Yahoo Sports did yesterday after the pick came through.
The Memphis Grizzlies selected 7'4", 300-pound Zach Edey with the 9th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. This is shocking considered the way that the NBA is turning in terms of value and upside as a hybrid center. He's more of a back-to-the-basket, Shaq, Hakeem Olajuwon type, and I absolutely have no idea how he's going to fit in the backcourt with John Morant. He only connected on 8% of his shots off pick and rolls, and defensively, he's a liability in the pick and roll with his limited footwork. There's defensive 3 seconds. Teams are going to hunt him in the pick and roll. This is one of the shockingest picks I've ever seen in the NBA draft, especially at the top 10. You're looking at what Memphis Grizzlies are leaving on the table with Tristan da Silva, the 6'9", very versatile forward out of Colorado, even Cody Williams, the younger brother of Jalen Williams, and his upside. So to me, this has got to be, a terrible pick. I'm giving it a C grade, and we'll see if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to take the L, but this is one of the worst picks I've seen in draft history.
If it's one of the worst picks, let me back up before I get going here. That was Kristen Peak of Yahoo Sports. She covers the draft for Yahoo. Here's my question. If it's one of the worst picks that she has seen in draft history, why is she giving it a C and not an F? C means average. It means that was an average pick. That's what a C is. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I understand what she's saying. She's saying a lot of things that a lot of people are going to say going forward about Zach Edey. And she explained it pretty well. She thinks it's one of the worst picks ever because Zach Edey doesn't have the footwork to be a good defender, and he doesn't finish super great, I guess, out of the pick and roll. I don't believe that. Just watching a lot of Purdue like I did this year, I think Zach Edey is great finishing out of the pick and roll. My question would have been about the passing, but that's, but beside the point. There are a lot of questions around Zach Edey. That cannot be disputed, okay? And I want to remind people, I think the number one thing that we have to remember is just how different college basketball and the NBA are, okay? They are vastly different, and we have seen throughout just the course of history we have seen players in college not get to show their full arsenal. Okay, I remember watching Karl Anthony Towns at Kentucky. He didn't shoot the ball a ton. Now he's a 40% three-point shooter in Minnesota. Okay, like that's just kind of the way that it is. And so just because we didn't see Zach Edey shoot the ball a ton in college doesn't mean that he can't. Just because we didn't see him run a lot of pick and roll in college doesn't mean that he can't. Okay, when it comes to the shooting stuff, the touch around the basket and the free throw shooting, like that points to him being capable of developing a jump shot at some point. Not saying he's going to be shooting, 40% from three, but if he can get to like this Brooke Lopez range of shooting, 36% from beyond the arc, like he's going to be a really good player. Okay, and here's the thing though, even if Zach Edey never develops, a super great jump shot and he never becomes a major offensive threat in the NBA, he's still going to have an impact on the offensive end of the floor because he's an excellent screener. He's going to get dunks cutting to the basket after setting screens. Okay, he is. If Steven Adams can play in the NBA and be a solid contributing rotational playoff kind of guy, because that's who Steven Adams is, then Zach Edey is going to be fine. He's going to be fine on the offensive end. Now, if you wanted to talk about the defensive concerns, then I get it. I'm going to get to those in a minute. I want to focus on the offense because the other thing that's interesting about Memphis that I don't think perfectly lines up with Zach Edey is the pace at which they play. Okay? And look, the Grizzlies were awful last year. They were the most injured team in the NBA. John Morant missed 25 games to start the year because of the gun stuff. And then he played 9 games, got hurt, and missed the rest of the season. Brandon Clark only played 6 games. Marcus Smart only played 20 games. Luke Kennard only played 39 games. Desmond Bane only played 42 games. Like, they were extremely injured last year. Like, the only core guy for Memphis that stayed healthy was Jaren Jackson Jr., who only played 66 games. So because of that, it's hard to know the fit. I think people have kind of forgotten, first of all, how good this Grizzlies team is, but secondly, how they play. So I went back to the 2 seasons prior to last year, and I think the most alarming stat, if you were going to tell me Zach Edey won't fit in Memphis, you would have to point to the pace at which the Grizzlies play. In the 2021 to 2022 season, the Grizzlies were 4th in pace, averaging about 100 possessions a game. Then in the 2022 to 2023 season, they were 8th in pace at 101 possessions per game. This is a team in the Memphis Grizzlies that is young, athletic, and likes to play fast. And when you have guys like John Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark, like just athletes everywhere, you should play faster. Okay, the Memphis Grizzlies are at their best when they get up and down the floor. And I just don't think that is where Zach Edey is at his best. Is he capable of playing in that style? Yes, he is. But just looking at his time at Purdue, like you could tell that there was an uptick in the pace at which the Purdue played at when Edey went to the bench, which wasn't very often. Either way, though, when Edey was in the game, Purdue purposefully slowed the game down to get him involved. The Grizzlies don't want to do that. The Grizzlies clearly want to get up and down, which once again, Edey is capable of doing and playing well in, but he'd be a much better fit on a slower paced team. Okay, he's not an elite athlete. I have questions about how he's going to protect the rim, especially if he's constantly sprinting up and down the court. But once again, offensively, I don't think the pace has that big of an impact on him because at a minimum, he's gonna set screens, roll, and dunk the ball. He can do that. Okay, there's no doubt about that. Defensively, though, is where I'm interested to see how the pace impacts how he looks in Memphis. Watching him at Purdue, he was great at protecting the rim when players drove at him. Okay, like that's why the drop coverage thing isn't as big of a concern for me because when you're that big and you're that long, even if you get beat off the dribble, like your size and your length allows you to recover, to block shots and contest shots. My question is, how does he do rotationally defending, if that makes sense? Like when I look at the elite rim protectors in the NBA, they all have the ability to shoulder the ball and then recover to the pass. Okay, and that's like, for example, if someone was to drive at Zach Edey and then make a drop-off pass to the center in the dunker spot, can Edey recover backwards in time to get a good contest on the shot? Okay, those are the plays that guys like Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, and Rudy Gobert make. Can Edey make those plays? Is he quick enough to show and then rotate back to his guy? That's what I want to see from him. Okay, I know a lot of people's concerns with him are how does he defend the pick and roll? What does he do if they switch? Look, there's like 3 centers in the NBA that can switch onto guards and you not worry about it. Okay, so the whole defending the screen and roll thing is not that big of a deal. And ultimately, like if Steven Adams can have a good role and contribute to the Grizzlies' success, then Zach Edey should totally be capable of doing the exact same thing. Now, looking at Khalil Ware, when Zach Edey got drafted, I expected it. I was ready for it. I'm excited for Zach Edey. I do think that because he's just going to play on a team that's good and a team that needs a guy like him, like he's going to play, he's going to develop and get better. So I'm excited for Zach Edey. Oh, man, but when Khalil Ware came off the board, first of all, I was surprised. I shouldn't have been because the Miami Heat are in desperate need of size, but I was excited. Khalil Ware could not have gone to a better place than Miami. Jay Billis, during the draft show last night, mentioned the issue with Khalil Ware, especially at Oregon, was his effort. Okay, like he has some struggles here and there with just effort and not playing hard, right? And then he gets in the portal, he comes to IU, and I said this last week, earlier in the week, I don't really remember. I said that, look, like when Khalil Ware's engaged, he's a good player. He was dominant at IU when he was legitimately engaged. Now he's going to Miami, where, heat culture is a real thing and a place where effort really matters. Like that is going to have an impact on Khalil Ware. Okay. Players talk about this all the time. Coaches talk about this all the time. When your best player is bought in, and your best player is consistently playing hard and doing these important things, then everyone else falls in line. Well, he's going to go play with Jimmy Butler, who demands that his teammates play hard. Okay, like he's going to do that. He's also going to get to play with Bam Adebayo, which is going to be so fun to watch because they can move Adebayo to the 4 and play Ware at the 5, and then you got these two huge, forward/center guys that can, step it out and shoot the ball a little bit and can definitely finish around the rim. Like it's also a player that Khalil Ware is going to get to learn from on both ends of the floor. Like Bam Adebayo is a legitimate all-star. Like he's a really good player. And so I'm excited to see what the Heat do with Khalil Ware. He's also playing for Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coach in the NBA right now. Okay, so Khalil Ware probably going to come off the bench if I had to guess. But Miami has needed a backup big for a couple years now. Thomas Bryant, sorry, man. You're not cutting it. And in addition to that, Khalil Ware gets to play with a few good offensive players. Guys like Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez. Okay? Like those are 3 guys that are more than capable of setting up Ware to score, right? Because that's what he's going to do. Khalil Ware is going to set screens, and he's either going to roll to the rim or he's going to pop out to shoot. That's what he's going to do. And you need guys that can handle the ball and find him in those spots. Once again, I don't think Khalil Ware could have gone to a better place than Miami, and I think he's going to find success because of who he's playing with. They're going to hold him to a high standard of, hey, like you have to show up and you have to contribute. Like they're going to hold him to that. And so I'm excited. Cannot wait to see what Khalil Ware looks like down in South Beach. I'm sure he's excited to get down to South Beach. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. I've got my big official NBA draft take. I was going to air this out yesterday, but then, I got sick. So when we come back, I'm going to give you my biggest take on the NFL draft, another draft thing. And then I want to talk about the Knicks because the Knicks got a lot better. That's all coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket also has the best guests. Parker Flemming coming up at 11 to talk about Zach Edey. Headed to Memphis, taken 9th overall last night. Congrats to him. Congrats to Khalil Ware, 15th overall. Let's continue to talk about the NBA draft. I want to be on the record when I say this, and I was hoping to air this out yesterday, but, instead I was airing out other things. So my official big-time NBA draft take is that Reed Sheppard is going to be the best player in this draft. Okay, and last week I voiced some concerns about Reed Sheppard. I went back, I double-checked my work, realized some things that I didn't realize originally, and officially I'm saying Reed Sheppard is going to be the best player in this draft. He went to a good team in the Houston Rockets. He's going to play for a good head coach in Ime Udoka. Playing alongside Jalen Green is slightly concerning. That's a guy who can be kind of ball dominant, but with Udoka at the helm, if they want Sheppard to have the ball, Sheppard will have the ball. That's something I love about Ime Udoka as a basketball coach. Doesn't say any nonsense, and what he says goes. It's pretty great. The Rockets like to play through the post a lot with Alperen Sengun. We'll see if that continues. The word is that they're shopping him around to see if they can move him. But if he stays, Reed Sheppard, an excellent shooter. That's part of why I think he's going to be highly successful in the NBA. So if he's in this kind of catch and shoot role, he's going to thrive in that area as well. That skill alone, his ability to shoot the ball, will keep him in the league. He's a good passer, which is important since he's got to play point guard. He's a good ball handler. He can get his own shot. He checks all of those offensive boxes. The question around him has to do with his size, right? And I talked about this last week. I aired out my concerns of, he's kind of small and all those things. And look, if he was 6'5", he would have been the consensus number 1 overall pick. But he's 6'1" and 7/8 without shoes. So basically, he's 6'2". He's 6'2" with no shoes on, right? So when he puts them on, he's probably like 6'3", 6'4", whatever. He only weighs 182 pounds, and he's not super long. He only has a 6'3" wingspan. That's small. That is very small. And then I started looking around the league, and, I was like, is there anyone else in the NBA who has a similar build that has been wildly successful? And there has been. There's a prominent guard in the NBA that was drafted 7th overall. When he came into the draft, he was 6'3" with shoes on, so pretty similar to Reed Sheppard. He was 183 pounds with a 6'4" wingspan, so just, an inch longer. That guard is Stephen Curry. And the concerns about Reed Sheppard and his size has been, can he survive defensively? Well, I've seen Steph Curry survive defensively throughout his entire career. And Reed Sheppard is a much better defender coming out of Kentucky than Steph Curry was coming out of Davidson. And so, my thing is, if Steph Curry can survive defensively, then so can Reed Sheppard. Okay, he was one of the better defenders in the SEC last year. Okay, he was. And now, to be clear, right, because I just put Reed Sheppard and Stephen Curry in the same sentence. Let me back up and be clear here. I am not saying that Reed Sheppard is going to be Stephen Curry. Okay, Steph was a much better ball handler coming out of Davidson than Sheppard is coming out of Kentucky. So some of the shot creation stuff isn't going to be the same. What I am saying, though, is that in a bad draft class, Reed Sheppard is going to be the best player because he's the best shooter we've seen coming out of college since we've seen Steph Curry. Okay, he's a guy who, at a minimum, is going to run off of a million screens, catch and shoot. Okay, and if you disagree that Reed Sheppard's the best shooter we've seen coming out of college since Steph, I will refer you to his 51% shooting from three-point land last year and his 70% true shooting percentage, which is off the charts crazy. All right, the kid can absolutely shoot the rock. The questions about his size, though, I don't know. I think we just point to Steph Curry and say, he's been in the league for a long time with a very similar build, right? And not as much defensive pedigree coming out of college. So Reed Sheppard is going to be the best player in this draft class. Houston got just a great player. Houston's going to be pretty good here in the next few years. So Reed Sheppard's going to be the best player, despite going 3rd overall. There were 2 French guys drafted in front of him. 3 of the top 6 picks in this year's draft were from France. And look, like this has already been established, but international players are coming. They're coming in waves. They're good. So get used to it. 4 of the players taken in the lottery this year were international players. Okay? Like international players have been a staple in the league for several years now. Like the 5 best players in the world, none of them are from America. Luka, Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Joel Embiid, and Giannis. Like 5 best players in the world, none of them from America. International players are here. They're not going anywhere. And some people, especially former players, do not like that these foreign players are having this much success. And if you don't believe me, here is Nick Young on Gilbert Arenas' podcast, just letting the world know that he does not like these foreign players.
Let's give it up for America. Because we won, baby. America won, baby. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown did it for America. They put Luka ass out. Oh, my God. I got so tired of everybody talking about these foreigners and shit. America's here, baby. It's America's league, baby. It's America's league. I hope y'all see it. Tatum here. Brown.
That was Nick Young. And, it's just airing it out, letting the world know that he does not like these foreign players. It is America's league. That's what he's saying. 2 things here. 1, if you want to hear stupidity, for some reason, I don't know why you would ever want to hear stupidity, but if you do, then just turn on the Gilbert Arenas podcast. It oozes out of that show. It's incredible. 2, while Nick Young is saying this, everyone like on the set of this podcast is nodding in agreement with everything that he is saying. It is absolutely apparent that former players do not like these international guys. They don't. And these international players are going to keep coming. With that being said, Alex Sarr, the guy who went number 2 overall to the Washington Wizards, wouldn't have taken him in a million years. He lacks the swagger of a top pick. Okay, he was asked during the pre-draft process if he wanted to go number 1 overall, and he was basically like, "No, I just want to go to the best fit." And just shows a lack of competitiveness for me, and the lack of like wanting to be the best, because that's kind of like a staple thing, right? Like if you were to ask Anthony Edwards that same question before his draft, he'd have been like, "Yeah, he's like I should be the number 1 overall pick for this draft. I should be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I should be the number 1 overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft." That's something that Anthony Edwards would have said. And like when you're drafting players this high, 1st, 2nd, 3rd overall, like you want guys that expect to be there and kind of expect to be great. And that is not kind of the sense that you get from Alex Sarr. Okay? So that's a red flag. I want to draft players that think that they're the best. And the guy that went number 1 is clearly not the best. Zachary Richache. Interesting prospect. When you look at everybody's big board, nobody had him number 1. I'm surprised that the Hawks didn't trade out of the pick, because they could have gotten him later in the draft. Like they could have, and that would have saved him money and all those things. He is a connective piece, maybe, only if he continues to kind of develop the jump shot. Like his last year over in France, he finally had a good shooting season. Frank Mason III, a guy who played at Kansas, came out, played against Richache this year, and was like, that is not a guy who should be the number 1 overall pick. And I tend to agree. And when you look at the big boards of all the quote-unquote experts, they would all agree as well. Okay, he's at best like this 3-and-D guy, but he's not a great athlete. He's just kind of a good one. And like, sure, he's an NBA player, but he shouldn't have been taken number 1 overall. And then you've got, I'm going to butcher his name, Tijuan Saloon. I believe that's how you pronounce it. He went 6th to the Hornets. That's a dude who can't even dribble. He can't dribble, can't really shoot, plays hard, though, defends, which, that's something that the Hornets have needed for forever, especially if your best player is going to be LaMelo Ball. So, like, that's kind of an interesting thing. Nikola Topic from Serbia goes 12th to the Thunder. The issue is he's, tore his ACL. Like, he's not even going to play this year. And he's best when the ball's in his hands, but the Thunder are going to put the ball in the hands of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams. And so Like all these foreign dudes are coming in, and I don't know how they're going to look, because part of it is, like I don't watch a ton of international basketball, but the other part of it is like I just don't know how will they fit over here in this kind of American game, because the game in the NBA is just very different from everything that you see overseas. Overseas is much more team oriented, whereas over here in the States, we aren't. It's a lot of ISO. It's a lot of let's give the ball to our best player and let's see if they can figure it out. So, going to be interesting to see how these international guys look. Reed Shepherd, though, is going to be the best player in this draft class. And the Knicks are currently having the best offseason of any team out there. Okay, so let's start with OG Anunoby re-signing to the Knicks, like I said that he would, for about the amount of money that I said he would. I said he would go for somewhere between $30 to $40 million. And OG Anunoby signed a deal, 5-year deal, where he's making $42 million a year. That's absurd. That's a lot of money. Honestly, that's a bit much for him. But when you're only paying Jalen Brunson $25 million a year, you can overpay OG Anunoby. Okay? Like that is an absolute gift. Okay, it is. And OG Anunoby is a player that's going to continue to help the Knicks get better. Okay, he feels like the Knicks. He feels in a lot of ways like Tom Thibodeau, tough, defensive-minded, going to play hard and do all those things. Like Anunoby is in the perfect situation playing for the New York Knicks, except for the fact that Tom Thibodeau loves to play his stars a whole lot of games and a whole lot of minutes. And OG Anunoby is a guy who has a pretty lengthy history of getting hurt, even going back to IU. When he was playing in Toronto, he was hurt all the time. So going to be interesting to see how they kind of balance that. But here's the good news for the Knicks. If OG Anunoby gets hurt and he can't play anymore, and you're like, oh no, we lost our best defender, then they can just be like, here's Mikal Bridges. The Knicks gave up an absolute load to the Brooklyn Nets to get Mikal Bridges. Like 4 first-round picks, all these things. And there are people out there who are going to be like, man, like, why would you trade away 4 first-round picks? You trade away 4 first-round picks because history proves that the chances of drafting somebody with one of those 4 picks that is as good as or better than Mikal Bridges are not very high, especially if you're the Knicks, who are going to continue to stack wins with Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Dave Vincenzo, and Josh Hart. Okay, so the Knicks did the right thing, which is something that I feel like I haven't said in forever. They did the right thing in moving those picks to bring in Mikal Bridges. This is one of the best defenders in the league, and more importantly, he's another guy that you can give the ball to and trust to go create shots. That was one of the issues for the Knicks in the playoffs. Was Jalen Brunson was the only guy who could put the ball on the floor and get a shot for himself or for his teammate. Now, Mikal Bridges can also do that. You can give him the ball when Jalen Brunson is on the bench for those, 8 to 12 minutes a night. Be like, all right, Bridges, go score. And he will. And he'll get other guys involved. Like, he's a good offensive player. And so Mikal Bridges adds a whole new layer to this Knicks team on both ends of the floor. And I said after the Celtics won the title and after they opened as heavy, heavy favorites to repeat, that everyone was going to get better, because that's just the way that the league works. Everyone gets better every year because the players continue to slowly but surely get better. The Knicks improved a lot yesterday, or over the past 2 days, bringing in Mikal Bridges. Okay, re-signing OG Anunoby. Like, this team is loaded. They're going to be great defensively. Several wing defenders. They're much deeper now. So now instead of starting Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, those are 2 guys who are now going to come off the bench. Okay, instead of Josh Hart having to play 48 minutes a night, he's going to play 30 or 28, somewhere in there. So the Knicks got better at the top of their roster, and they got deeper. Okay, the Villanova Knicks and the Boston Celtics are now hands down, as of today, right? Because the offseason is long and the draft is still kind of happening, and we don't know how good or bad some of these guys are going to be as they get drafted as rookies. But as of right now, the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference are the Knicks and the Celtics. It's Celtics, it's the Knicks, a large gap, everybody else. Okay? When we look at the Knicks, they've got 4 guys now that can go score and are good on both ends, like Brunson, Bridges, Randall, and Anunoby. Like, all four of those guys can go get their own shot. They're big, they're long, especially if they can convince Hartenstein to sacrifice some money to re-sign and stay with the Knicks. Like, they have plenty of shooting. They've got some depth. They got guys who can come in off the bench and fill it up. Like, they're going to be an absolute handful for everyone next year. They check every box, every single one. Yeah, they have plenty of wings. They have plenty of size. They have plenty of shot creation, plenty of shooting, plenty of players that can play defense. My only question with the Knicks is, can you win a title with a guy who's 6'1", 6'2", and Jalen Brunson? That's really my only question, because like, I just watching this previous NBA Finals, like the Celtics and their size and their length swallowed up Kyrie Irving. I mean, they just ate that man alive with the size and the length that they were able to throw at him. Like, are they going to do the exact same thing to Jalen Brunson over the course of a 7-game series? That's what I'm interested in seeing. When it comes to odds, the Knicks weren't even like on the list, but they are now tied with the Nuggets for the second best odds to win the title next year at plus 750. Okay, watch out. High-level basketball might be back in New York City. I really hope that's not the case, because those guys are really obnoxious, to say the least. One more draft take when we come back, and then we're going to get into the Pacers. They have 3 picks tonight. We're going to talk about what they could potentially do. Indiana Fever play tonight against the Seattle Storm. And then coming up at 11, Parker Flemming on the Grizzlies. But in 4 minutes, Pacers draft tonight. What are they going to do? Who are they going to take? We'll get into that here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for listening. No matter how you're listening, maybe that's on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Go subscribe to Indy's Sports Ticket there. Maybe you're watching on Twitter. Follow us at Ticket1430 if you want to watch there. Maybe you're just listening in the car, which is, pretty awesome as well. Zach Edey goes 9th overall last night to the Memphis Grizzlies. Khalil Ware going 15th overall to the Miami Heat. Can't wait to see what they both do in the league, running through just the draft and some of the free agency stuff that has happened. And waking up this morning, going, to different news outlets and things of that nature that are covering the draft, there's a lot of talk about the Timberwolves and how great of a day they had yesterday, bringing in both Terrence Shannon Jr., who, was fully acquitted on the rape charges, which is great for him. They're bringing him in, dynamic ball handling scorer, and they're bringing in Rob Dillingham from Kentucky, another dynamic ball handling scorer, which are the things that they really, really need. And people are highlighting them, talking about how great of a day that they had. But quietly, because they aren't very good, so people aren't going to talk about them. That's the thing with, the Timberwolves. People love them right now because they have the golden child of the NBA in Anthony Edwards, even though Anthony Richardson, golden child of the NFL right now. Everybody seems to love him. But so everyone's kind of raving about what the Timberwolves did. Meanwhile, the Trailblazers, who were once again awful last year, have had a great past couple of days. Okay, I think them and the Knicks really kind of stick out these past couple of days. Like I just highlighted what the Knicks did and re-signing OG and bringing in Mikal Bridges and doing all those things. But the Trailblazers added Denny Advia, who no one knows who that is. He played for the Wizards last year. That's why you don't know who he is. Good. He's a good rotational player, right? And then they draft Donovan Clingan. That's a player who's going to contribute to winning immediately. Hey, like of all these teams that are rebuilding, like the Trailblazers, to me, stick out as a team that is on the right track. They've got these two young, explosive guards in Shannon Jr. and also in Scoot Henderson. Now they're bringing in Donovan Clingan, who's versatile, can set screens, can pass, and do all those things. Obviously, we know how well he defends the rim. Like the Trailblazers have a good young core, and I wanted to mention them because they are rebuilding in the proper manner. Now, I want to move into the Pacers. In day 2 of the draft, what do the Pacers do? Does Bronny go before 55? Probably not. I think the Lakers are going to end up being able to nab him there. They had a good day yesterday, too. Dalton Connect falling to 17 is an absolute gift for the Lakers. He is exactly what they needed. Big wing who can score. We all know who Dalton Connect is. Okay, he was the second best player in college basketball this previous season. Now let's talk about the Pacers. Right? They have 3 picks tonight. And if I had to make a bet on what the Pacers would do tonight, there are 2 things that I think will happen for the Pacers. One is I expect them to trade at least one of, if not 2 of, their picks tonight. They have 3 second-round picks. It's a lot. Okay, that's a lot of picks. I don't think that they'll keep all of them. He's, so we'll see what they end up doing with those 3 picks. Brian Haas chiming in, saying that Dalton Connect's too old. Look, he's only 23. We see guys get better all the time. Also, Haas, he was not drafted in the lottery. He was drafted 17th. The lottery ends at 14. He's going to come in and be a totally fine player. We see players get better all the time. Like the peak of any NBA player's career is when they're 27, 28, maybe 29 years old. That's kind of the prime. We see them typically ascend until we get to that point. Okay, like Jason Tatum is 26 years old. He's better now than when he was 23. I promise you. Like Dalton Connect is going to be a good player. He's going to continue to get better. Okay, back to the Pacers. They're going to trade away at least one of, if not 2 of their picks tonight. And I wouldn't be surprised, I also expect them to draft a wing. Okay, I hope it's either Cameron Christie out of Minnesota Okay, brother of Max Christie, who plays for the Lakers. I like Christie. Okay, like he was a good player at Minnesota this last year. 6'5" with a 6'8" wingspan. So pretty similar build to a guy like Ben Shepherd. He can shoot the ball well. Shot 39% from three last year at Minnesota. He's a good passer as well. So offensively, like he's going to fit in with the Pacers. Defensively, I think he has the tools necessary to be a decent defender. Okay, tall, long, decently athletic, but he's frail. He's tiny. Okay, he only weighs 190 pounds. He's going to have to add some weight to be able to defend some of these bigger wings. Okay, but the tools are there for him to be a 3-and-D guy. He's just, he's 19 years old. Okay, like most 19-year-olds aren't exactly built in, most 19-year-olds don't come into the NBA with the necessary size to succeed. Most don't, but we'll end up seeing what happens with Cameron Christie going forward. Wouldn't mind seeing him in a Pacers uniform. The other player that I would like to see the Pacers draft, like if the Pacers only draft one guy tonight, I want it to be this guy. I want the Pacers to draft Keyshawn Johnson. Okay, a guy from Arizona, originally played at San Diego State. He was a fifth-year senior, transfers to Arizona to go play with those guys. He's a little bit older, but he's a legit wing. Okay, he's 23. He's a legit wing. He is 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. So he's tall. He's long. If you saw him play at all at Arizona, one of the big things that really kind of jumped off the screen was just how athletic the guy was, like explosive athlete. Okay, an explosive athlete who shot 39% from three last year. Now, that is an outlier year when he was playing at San Diego State. He didn't shoot the ball well at all. Okay, but he got in the gym, developed, became a pretty good three-point shooter at 39%. So, seems like he can shoot the ball a bit. He can defend. Okay, he can defend bigger players because he's 224 pounds and he has a 6'10" wingspan. Right, so he can defend these bigger guys. He's also quick enough to defend smaller ball handlers. So he provides much-needed defensive versatility for the Pacers while not being a complete offensive zero. Once again, shot 39% for three last year and is capable of finishing around the rim because he's athletic. Okay, I think he checks a lot of boxes of what the Pacers need. So would love to see the Indiana Pacers take Keyshawn Johnson tonight out of, Arizona. That's where he plays. Moving to the WNBA, because that here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, we cannot go a day without discussing Caitlin Clark. That's not true. I don't think I talked about her on Tuesday. But yeah, that's, this is the world that we live in right now. Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in the world, and they're set to play again tonight. They're coming to the end of this important 9-game stretch where they're currently 5-2. Okay, they're going on the road tonight, all the way up to Seattle to take on the Seattle Storm, and they're playing at 10. They're going to be on Amazon Prime, and where they're going to do, all that good stuff. So they're playing at 10. Hopefully they can bounce back after losing on Sunday to the Chicago Sky. The issue is they're playing the Storm, who are fourth in the league with a record of 10-6. Coming into the season, they were projected to be one of the 4 best teams in the NBA. So, going to be interesting to see what they do. In terms of how they play, they're playing much better as of late, but I think as we all know, the Fever haven't exactly been playing the best teams in the WNBA over the course of this 9-game stretch. That's why it's been so important, because they've had all these winnable games. Yeah, the Storm that they're playing tonight, this is the best team that they've played since the Connecticut Sun on June 10th, right? So it's been 17 days since they played against one of the better teams in the NBA. I think we're going to get a pretty good idea here of how much better this Fever team has gotten over this 7-game stretch. Okay, this is going to be a real test for the Fever, but I'm excited. Caitlin Clark has found her rhythm offensively. Aaliyah Boston has started to play better. They've gone to her more on the low block, and she's been scoring down there. She's been rebounding as well. Kelsey Mitchell has been on an absolute heater lately, just knocking down literally everything. Right, so she's been playing at a high level, and I'm excited to see what this Indiana Fever team looks like going forward. Okay, they're playing the best team that they've played since they played the Connecticut Sun on June 10th. It's like we're going to get to see how the Indiana Fever look against one of the best teams in the league tonight. And I think they'll be fine on the offensive end. I think, as we all know, this Indiana Fever team can absolutely score the basketball between Clark, Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, the Nalissa Smith girl. She's had a couple great games. She's also had a couple really bad games, so she's kind of up and down. But like the Fever have no shortage of offense on this roster. The question is, can they get stops? Okay, that has been the question around them all year long, as is oftentimes the question around younger teams. Okay, so I'm going to give you some groundbreaking analysis here. I don't know if you're ready for this, but if the Indiana Fever can get stops tonight, they'll win. I know. So profound. You never would have guessed that or thought of that yourself. But that's how this Fever team is. Okay, like as we watch them, like the offense is clearly there. Okay, like everybody that they put on the floor can score in some way, shape, or form. Okay, all the ladies that they bring in off the bench, they can all knock down threes. Nalissa Smith and Aaliyah Boston on the low block. They can punish people and they can score. Caitlin Clark, she can get to the rim. Obviously, we know she can shoot the ball. She's an excellent passer. Kelsey Mitchell, same thing. She can get to the rim. She can, hit a jump shot. Like, they're loaded on the offensive side of the ball. The question is, are they going to play defense? That's the question. Once again, they're playing at 10 o'clock tonight. That's what happens when you play on the West Coast. That's terrible. I'm not looking forward to it. Will I stay up? More than likely so, but it's a late game, 10 p.m., Amazon Prime, Indiana Fever taking on the 4th-seeded Seattle Storm. Big one. Be great if the Fever could go up there and steal one. Okay, if not, they'll fall to 5-3 during this important 9-game streak, and then I think they follow up playing the Phoenix Mercury. I think that's on Sunday. Can't wait for that one because Diana Taurasi has opened her mouth a lot when it comes to Caitlin Clark. She did it before the draft happened. And I think Caitlin Clark is going to go out there and go at her. 39-year-old Diana Taurasi also took the Olympic spot that should have been given to Caitlin Clark. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be interesting. I'm seeing comments here on the YouTube page saying that the Pacers need a new center because Miles Turner sucks. It's just not the case. Okay, Miles Turner is a good player. All right, if he's the 3rd or 4th best player on your team, that's best case scenario. That's where he's at right now for the Pacers. He's the 3rd or 4th best player on this team. He shot the ball well from 3. Defensively, could he be a little bit better? Yes, I'd like to see him return to the rim protector he was, 3 or 4 years ago. But, we'll see whether or not that happens. But the Pacers do not need another center because, if you wanted to say that the Pacers needed another center, it wouldn't be because Miles Turner sucks. It would be because they just don't have a legitimate backup. I'm not, the biggest Isaiah Jackson fan. He's a little small. He's like 6'9". He's super athletic, and that allows him to play center. But I'd like to see them go out and get a legitimate big. But more than anything else, like they need a wing. Okay? They need a guy who can come in and actually play defense. Okay, because say whatever you want about the Pacers. This was the 2nd best offensive team in the league this year, behind the Boston Celtics, that being made possible by Miles Turner's ability to stretch the floor. Okay? Like that is the thing. All right, we can sit around and we can complain about Miles Turner all we want. Okay? If you want to question the defense, that's fine. Go right ahead. Okay? Like I'm fine, whatever. But offensively, his ability to stretch the floor is, dare I say, the most important aspect of the Indiana Pacers. He is what allows them to have the spacing necessary. Okay? Like he is what allows it. Like that's one of the interesting things about the Memphis Grizzlies this year. When Zach Edey's on the floor, how's that going to work when he's standing, 5 feet away from the basket and John Morant goes charging downhill and he now has to finish over a 7-footer. Okay? Like with a guy like Miles Turner on the floor, that's not a thing. Okay? The reason why the Pacers scored so many paint points this year is because of Miles Turner's ability to take the opposing team center and drag him 30 feet away from the basket. Okay, like that is a large part of why the Pacers found so much success on the offensive end of the floor this year. Okay, and so look, if the Pacers want to go out and they want to draft another center, that's fine. Just make sure he can shoot the crap out of the ball because Miles Turner can. And that is a very important aspect of this Indiana Pacers offense. Okay? That's what he is. All right. But once again, if you want to complain about the defense, I have no issue with it. It was there in spurts, I thought, throughout the playoffs, but it wasn't there consistently enough. Okay. Defense is more than just blocks. And I thought that there were some lapses that Miles Turner had. And, it happens, but it can't happen as often as it did, especially if you're a guy that, used to think that he deserved to win Defensive Player of the Year. Right. And so we'll see what he looks like next year. I'm excited for this Pacers team. Hopefully they can grab, Keyshawn Johnson out of Arizona or a player similar to that big, long, athletic wing that can actually play defense. Coming up in 5 minutes, Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalita Substack, something that really kind of hones in on the Grizzlies. I'm excited to get his take on Zach Edey getting drafted there last night. That's coming up here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indie Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Ticket, joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalidis Substack, a Grizzlies-focused Substack. I've had him on the show a couple times before, but this time we actually get to talk about the Grizzlies because they took Zach Edey last night with the 9th overall pick. Parker, what's going on, man?
Jonathan, man, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk with you about the Grizzlies' newest draft pick, and I know that you're in the market where we might have some Zach Edey fans, we might have some Zach Edey rivals, but regardless, we're going to talk about Zach Edey, and I'm pretty pumped to do so.
Okay, so you're excited. It sounds like. It seems like you're pretty happy with the pick.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and I even thought this, like with having a nice pick, like nice isn't the most glamorous spot. Obviously, if you wanted to get, like for me, I was really high on the potential fits for Donovan Clingan and Reed Shepherd, and even like looking at mocks and stuff like, okay, I can sell myself on Ron Holland, but they couldn't go get those guys. And I'm sure we may talk about the reports that were out there, but with how the board shook out, I'm like, and I'm not saying this just because like I follow the Grizzlies or anything, but like there wasn't a clear-cut better option than Zach Edey for the Memphis Grizzlies and their fit. Like I could have seen Devin Carter. I could have seen, like if they really wanted to commit to Jaren Jackson at the 5, they could have gone Montes Buzelis, who like I wasn't that high on Buzelis, but I think Edey fits perfectly with what they're trying to accomplish with the center position. That was their biggest need of the offseason as well. So, yeah, I'm pretty sold on it.
Okay, good. Were you disappointed at all that the Grizzlies didn't trade up to grab Clingan? Because that's what I thought was going to happen. Like I'm sitting there, I'm watching the Hornets at 6, and I'm like, okay, this is the moment where the Grizzlies trade up and grab Clingan, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, so we saw the reports. We saw Jake Fisher, he does great work, but, he had a miscalculation. And I think ultimately, Charlotte backed out of it. I know Kristen Peak from Yahoo Sports reported that they wanted Tijon Salon, and that is also who they ended up going with. And I think Charlotte got wind of, hey, Salon's not going to be there at 9. He'll probably go to San Antonio at 8. And then by then, like, you're not negotiating with Portland to not take Clingan,
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened. I think Charlotte, they looked at the board and like, we can't get our guy at 9. Let's get him at 6. And now for the Grizzlies, it's initially like, you're like, dang it, they couldn't get Donovan Clingan. And then, they pick Zach Edey. You sell yourself on Zach Edey. But now they still have all their first-round picks to work with. They still have guys like Luke Kennard, Santi Aldama, Zaire Williams, John Conchar that they could potentially use in a trade to go get a serviceable upgrade if they feel like they need to do so. Because, I mean, you saw that having this draft capital is important. I mean, look at what New York did with Mikal Bridges, who I think, Brooklyn might have had them a little bit. I think they had them pretty they had all the leverage there. Yeah. But like Denny Osby of Portland, I mean, he took a lottery pick and a future first. And then like you need draft capital if you really want to bolster your roster and make a big move. And like the Grizzlies, they accomplished their need, and they kept their draft ammo dry so that they can save it for when they feel like they can make an upgrade. And they've shown, I know they haven't traded future first aside from Marcus Smart, but like they try to trade 4 firsts for Mikal Bridges. They try to trade 3 firsts for OG Anunoby, and they were willing to trade all their draft capital for Kevin Durant. So I think there's a willingness, but we just got to see it ultimately manifest.
Joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalidis Substack. We're talking the Grizzlies taking Zach Edey last night with the 9th overall pick. So you also seem to really like the fit. I have some concerns just with the pace at which the Grizzlies like to play. I just feel like Edey would be better if on a team that played a little bit slower. But why do you think Edey fits well with this Grizzlies team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to dodge the fact of any concerns. I think the combine eased my concerns a little bit about how he can adjust to a faster NBA. I mean, I know he tested better than guys like Jonathan Clingan and Alex Sarr, Eve Nissy. Like, he tested well athletically. And I think the thing that he offsets his mobility and speed with the fact that he's in like pristine condition. Like, his conditioning for a 7'5", 300-pound big man is quite marvelous. Like, he only missed 2 games in his collegiate career. He averaged over 30 minutes a game in college. Like, this is a guy that can go. And I think that's what he offsets to it. But also, too, at the same time, people are going to point out the concerns of, like, what's he going to look like defensively? Is he going to get picked on? All this. And I think in Memphis, he's in an environment where, like, yes, those flaws might get magnified at times, but he's in an environment and a defensive ecosystem that can minimize his flaws. Because, I mean, even with the storm that last year was, they had 34 players and they were still a top 10 defense. He's playing alongside a defensive player of the year, Jaren Jackson Jr. in the front court that now allows Jaren Jackson Jr. to roam while you have a 7'5" guy with a 7'11" wingspan and drop coverage. You have Marcus Smart, you have Vince Williams. Like, I think that this is a good system that could potentially hide his flaws while magnifying his strengths. So, yeah, I have those concerns. I'm not going to act like Zach Edey's the perfect basketball player or anything, but I think he's in a good spot where he can grow upon his weaknesses and amplify his strengths.
Yeah, the Edey thing, I got to be honest, the people being like, oh, he's going to have to play drop coverage and he can't defend on the perimeter. There's like 3 7-footers in the league who can actually defend on the perimeter, you know? And so when people talk about that, I'm just like, okay, like, whatever. That's like a pretty normal thing. My thing that I think I'm most interested for Edey is, what does he look like on offense? Like, I think because look, like, Nikola Jokic led the league in post-ups per games last year, and he only had 8 post touches a game. So, like, you know, the Grizzlies aren't going to stop everything to take the ball out of John Morant's hands so Zach Edey can post up. Like, that's not going to happen. So I'm kind of expecting him to fill a role pretty similar to what Steven Adams had with the Grizzlies, like setting a lot of screens. Is that kind of what you project for Edey, or do you think they'll maybe give him the ball a little bit more than what I'm thinking that they will?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's funny you ask, because I actually asked Zach Kleiman about this last night in the post-first round press conference. So before I say anything, I like how people use drop coverage as like a death nail for centers, when like good drop coverage centers shut down the paint.
Rudy Gobert?
I don't know why it's like a death sentence. I mean, yeah, it gets dicey when they get drawn out to the perimeter and they're giving up step-in three-pointers, but anyways, offensively, I asked the same thing because he had over 500 post-up attempts at Purdue last season in about 39 to 40 games. That is an astronomical amount of post-ups. So I asked him, what do you envision his role to be? Because as we've seen Taylor Jenkins, whether it's Valanciunas or Adams, like, he likes to operate those bigs around the top of the key, around the elbows, to kind of be, I wouldn't say like a hub, but like they're screening, they're playing in handoffs, all that. You know, he pointed to the fact that he's going to be a really good screener, and the fact that now you have a massive pick and roll target with John Morant is just going to make that pick and roll more deadly. And he's a good offensive rebounder. He averaged 5 offensive rebounds last year, so he pointed to his offensive rebounding, but also too, he said, like, yeah, we're not going to post him up all the time, but at the end of the day, like, if we post him up, you have to guard him, like, and he's going to be hard to guard. So, like, I think he could be fine and quite serviceable quite quickly offensively. And I think people are kind of misunderstanding, like, even if he is like a 7'5" Jonas Valanciunas or Steven Adams or a VK Zubac, those are decade-long starting centers.
Yeah.
Like, and you're talking about a 7'5" version of that. Like, I think the thing that makes Edey so polarizing was, for one, his style of play is so drastically different than the NBA. But also, two, the only players that we've seen with his statistical or with his measurements profile are your novelties, your Boban Marjanovic and Taco Fall. So you automatically draw those guys to Edey when that may not be the case at all. So like, we don't know what he's going to be. I'm not going to act like this is a generational talent on the way, but like, I think he's going to fit with what the Grizzlies want and need.
No doubt. Joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sub-Sack-Elitis Substack. I'm finally saying the name right. I only had to have you on the show like 4 times for that to happen.
Hey, it's all good. It's a tough name, so I get it.
So I think defensively you're right about how Zach Edey will fit alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. How do you think they fit alongside on the offensive end of the floor?
Yeah, so Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to space the floor for Edey. It's going to allow for Jaren to work more from the perimeter. I do wonder, like, hey, what does it look like when you're trying to post up Jaren, you're trying to ISO Jaren, and Edey's in the dunker spot, or are you going to have him slotted in the corner? Or do you have him on the opposite side dunker so that he can basically like clean up if needed? Like I'm very interested about how that's going to work offensively, but I think he's next to the perfect big man that could space the floor. He can shoot a high volume of threes as a big man. He can put the ball on the deck. Like I am very interested to see what it looks like. I'm ready for like if he starts. Sorry about my dog. She's a little protective one, but I'm ready. I might be a sicko for saying this, but like I'm ready for like the Gortat screens that Edey's going to set for Jaren when he gets downhill. Like,
yeah,
like if he's stealing his guy off to prevent him from rotating, that could be a one-on-one matchup for Jaren. So hey, there's stuff like that. I think that is probably obviously the fit with Ja, the fit with Desmond Bane. Those are the clearest ones to see because it's a lot of handoffs, a lot of pick and roll.
Yeah,
I think he's going to open up a crap ton of looks for Desmond Bane as a shooter. And Desmond Bane shot his best when he played alongside Steven Adams, setting his screens, playing off handoffs. So I'm very interested to see how all that works now, but with Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. I want to transition now to round 2 tonight, which, we were talking off the air. I was like, I think I'm more excited for tonight because the Pacers actually have picks. And so let me just ask you, like, what do you think the Pacers should do tonight with their draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it off the air. Can you remind me what picks the Pacers have? I'm looking at my board rather than like the actual second round board. So like, what picks do the Pacers have?
So I know that they're 38th. I don't even know. Like they're 38th. I know they've got, and I think the other two are in the 50s. Let me double check that real quick. But that sounds right. I know I'm a big fan of, what's his name? I got his name written down. Keyshawn Johnson. That's kind of the guy that I'm looking at. Like, I'd love it if the Pacers could grab him.
He would be a good pickup. He's a guy, he's a little bit older, but he can play right away. I mean, they should look at packaging those picks up and maybe trying to go get Kyle Filipowski. Like, could you convince – because, I mean, Indiana doesn't need the roster spots, but could you convince Indiana or Toronto, be like, hey, how about we do a trade for 38 and one of our picks in the 50s for the 31st pick and try to go get Kyle Filipowski? Because, I mean, Jalen Smith, he's going to be a free agent. I don't think they're going to keep him. And then you also have Ajax, who is going to be a restricted free agent next year. And, yes, it kind of makes it murky because, okay, how is he going to break through the rotation? Because you have Pascal Siakam, you have Jarice Walker, who you want to play too. But, like, at the end of the day, he's 7 foot. He can dribble, pass, shoot. He kind of – I feel like he can fit in a Carlisle, Halliburton system. Like, I think he can play next to Miles Turner or Siakam. That would be my pick as like a why not? Like, if they really wanted to kind of be aggressive, but if they kind of wanted to stay pat, I mean, Isaiah Crawford would be a good pick out of Louisiana Tech. He averaged 4 stocks a game, and he also shot 40% from 3. He tore his ACL twice in the same knee in college, but like, he's such a productive basketball player, and he's going to a team like Indiana where like he doesn't need to do a lot besides defend and shoot threes.
Yeah,
he'd be a great pick. Jalen Wells, great outside shooter. Cam Spencer, he's undersized, but he's just a competitive dog. Like, imagining him with TJ McConnell is fun to think about.
Oh, wow.
But also, too, if they plan on keeping all these picks, they should kind of look to do like a draft and stash with someone. And I don't know what that looks like. I think the highest draft and stash candidate on my board currently is Juan Nunez.
Okay.
I don't know if Melvin Aginsa would be a draft and stash, but he might be good too. But I think they should just draft and stash one of them, or potentially trade it for like a future second or something to kind of stock up a little bit on more draft capital ammo, as they gave up quite a bit for Pascal Siakam. So very interested to see what they do tonight, because they have a lot of different options they can go down, and they're a very deep team from deep at the guards, deep at the forward spots. I think maybe targeting a big that fits their system, especially with, you're going to kind of have to money ball it a little bit, because like you're not going to try to retain Jalen Smith when he wasn't a guy that played in the playoffs. You're not going to try to retain him. Isaiah Jackson, it's going to be tough to give him his next contract too. So like maybe you try to go get a bid that you can develop and have them ready to go after year one or year two.
Joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sub-Sack Elitist Substack. So the Pacers pick 36th, 49th, and 50th tonight. We're talking about some potential guys there. What do you think of Cameron Christie out of Minnesota? He was a guy who kind of caught my eye. 6'5", long arms with like a 6'8" wingspan. Shot, a tick under 40% from three last year. He's a little smaller, but he's also like 19. So I don't know. Is he on your board? What do you kind of think of him?
Yeah, I actually have a first round grade on Cam Christie, because I think that there's some real upside to his game. I mean, he's only 18 years old, but as an 18-year-old, he shot 39% from three. And the thing, I know that doesn't pop out a whole lot, but if you look at his shot profile within that, 60% of his threes came from catch and shoot. 40% came off the dribble. He shot just as well off the catch as he did off the dribble. So, like, I think if you're kind of looking for like a small upside swing in the second round, I mean, Cam Christie's about 6'5", good ball handling fluidity. Like, I don't mean to give like a hot take or anything, but I think he moves a lot like Tyler Hero. And I think he has a little bit more defensive upside than a guy. Even though Hero is probably the better offensive player, I think Christie has better defensive upside. Like, I think Cam Christie, if you're breaking down the guys available on the board, I think him and like a guy like Johnny Furphy are my favorite upside swings in the draft.
Okay, Cam Christie. Then let's go. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I really like your idea on them packaging picks to trade up for Filipowski, because I think a large part of why the Pacers' offense has worked as well as it has, especially this last year, is because you have a 7-footer in Miles Turner who can kind of step out and kind of clear out the lane. Like the points in the paint that the Pacers got last year, especially in the playoffs, were insane, and that's just because they don't have a 7-footer kind of crowding the painted area. So you bring in a guy like Filipowski who can also really stretch the floor. I think that'd be great for the Pacers and just the style at which they want to play. And like you said, because of his ability to shoot the ball and space the floor, like he should be able to play alongside Siakam and Halliburton and these guys. So I'm excited. Last thing before I let you go, just looking at the draft as a whole last night, which pick do you think stands out the most that you're like, I love this pick?
Rob Dillingham to Minnesota. I don't know what San Antonio was doing, trading that pick in particular, especially a guy like Rob Dillingham, for a pick in the 2030s when you have Victor Wembanyama. Like, I understand you kind of want to like let stuff marinate and all that stuff, but like coming away with this draft with Stephon Castle and Rob Dillingham would have been awesome next to Wembanyama.
Yeah.
But also too, it's like, it'd be one thing, like if you told me in that trade that like they did a salary dump where they traded 8 and some other stuff to go get Jaden McDaniels or Naz Reid, that would have been one thing. But like all you got was draft capital in the 2030s. Like you have Victor Wembanyama, like go take some shots. But like with Rob Dillingham, he was one of the most interesting players in this draft because he has real ups. Like I had him 7 on my overall board because it's like this guy could be like an all-star point guard. but also too, he could just be like this bench guy. But now in Minnesota, he has this perfect system where he gets to learn from Mike Conley. Let's just start with that. He gets to learn to be an NBA point guard from Mike Conley, who's like one of the best floor generals in the NBA since the 2010s. And then that bench with Dillingham, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it's going to be awesome. And also, too, he's a great playmaker, and he's also a phenomenal catch-and-shoot player. So he's a guy that can be off the ball when Ant is on the ball. And then he's not a good defender, but, like, you're in Minnesota when you have Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert. Like, that's a perfect system to have your flaws hidden. So, like, that's the pick that stands out the most to me. And when I'm thinking about, okay, how would a board look like if I ranked these guys now based off where I know they're at? I think Rob Dillingham would be in my top 3. It's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he looks like there. The Timberwolves also grabbed Terrence Shannon Jr., and I just love how they're like, you know what we need? We need guys who can put the ball on the floor and go score. And they got, they have 2 guys who can definitely do that in the first round. I'm excited to see what they look like going forward. Parker, thanks for your time, man. This was great as always.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Hey, you got it. That was Parker Flemming, writer of the Zach Edey Substack. Great writer, just great guy as well. So his Substack's free, but if you go and if you pay for it, all the proceeds go to St. Jude and, doing cancer research and all those great things. Once again, Parker Flemming of the Zach Edey Substack. Just love having that guy on. When we come back here in about 4-ish minutes, we're going to get into more of Zach Edey to the Grizzlies, Khalil Ware going 15th to the Heat. That's coming up next here in about 4 minutes.
Hey, summer is here. Don't sit on the sidelines. Get to feelgreatindy.com. Why? Because since 2012, thousands of men and women have trusted Affinity Whole Health's customized home programs to optimize their hormones and achieve their health goals. I did. For years, patients have also requested a solution to chronic weight issues. But until now, a suitable solution has not been available. Well, now there is. We're excited to offer semaglutide, a treatment shipped right to your home. Bioidentical hormone therapy is what I'm on, focusing on treating hormone imbalances using a combination of key hormones, including testosterone. Visit feelgreatindy.com today. That's feelgreatindy.com to set up your consultation today. Do not put off your health goals another minute. Visit feelgreatindy.com.
We depend on our drinking water supply daily, but where does that water come from?
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Hope you're just having a great day. I'm sure Zach Edey and Khalil Ware are both having great days. After having great nights last night, great draft last night. Round 2 tonight. Pacers have 3 picks. Can't wait to get into those here in a bit as well. But let's start with Zach Edey getting drafted 9th overall last night to the Memphis Grizzlies. Zach Edey fits exactly what the Grizzlies need on paper. Okay, they needed another center. This is a guy who can play alongside Jaren Jackson Jr., checks a lot of the boxes on paper. But the Grizzlies, I think, would have been better off drafting a more athletic player. That being said, I don't mind the pick because, once again, this pick checks a lot of the boxes that the Grizzlies were looking to check off during this draft class. Okay, so ultimately, I don't mind it. Something I wouldn't do, though, is call it one of the worst picks in NBA draft history, like Kristen Peak did of Yahoo Sports. Y'all just listen to Kristen Peak explaining why this is one of the worst drafts one of the worst picks in NBA draft history.
The Memphis Grizzlies selected 7'4", 300-pound Zach Edey with the 9th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. This is shocking considered the way that the NBA is turning in terms of value and upside as a hybrid center. He's more of a back-to-the-basket, Shaq, Hakeem Olajuwon type, and I absolutely have no idea how he's going to fit in the backcourt with Ja Morant. He only connected on 8% of his shots off pick and rolls. And defensively, he's a liability in the pick and roll with his limited footwork. There's defensive 3 seconds. Teams are going to hunt him in the pick and roll. This is one of the shockingest picks I've ever seen in the NBA draft, especially at the top 10. You're looking at what Memphis Grizzlies are leaving on the table with Tristan da Silva, the 6'9", very versatile forward out of Colorado, even Cody Williams, the younger brother of Jalen Williams, and his upside. So to me, this has got to be, a terrible pick. I'm giving it a C grade, and we'll see if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to take the L, but this is one of the worst picks I've seen in draft history.
It's one of the worst picks I've seen in draft history. Let me give it a C. It should be an F. If it's as bad as she's saying, Christy Peak of Yahoo Sports, then it should be an F. And I understand that there are a lot of questions surrounding Zach Edey, right? And rightfully so, because, the way that, the NBA game is it's just vastly different from the NBA game. It is. And so I understand that there are a lot of questions around Zach Edey, what he's going to be in the NBA. But I want to remind people that just because we didn't see him do the things that he's going to do in the NBA in college doesn't mean that he's incapable of doing them. Okay? Just because we didn't see him shoot the basketball in college doesn't mean that he can't shoot. Okay? I think he has more to his game than people realize. The touch around the basket and the free throw shooting points to him developing into some sort of decent jump shooter, right? Whether that's 15 feet away from the basket, maybe that's out from 3. If he turns into a 36, 37% three-point shooter like Brooke Lopez has, then he's going to be a legit NBA player for a pretty substantial amount of time, right? But even if he never develops, any sort of jump shot, he's still an excellent screener. He's going to get dunks cutting to the basket after setting screens. Ja Morant is going to find him around the bucket for him to score. Like, that's going to happen because he's playing alongside just really good players in Memphis. The questions that people have, though, or correction, the questions that I have for Zach Edey, though, have to kind of do more with the defensive end. I'm going to get into those here in a second. But offensively, I think the most interesting thing is the pace at which the Grizzlies want to operate at. Okay, like they want to play up and down. Like we didn't see them play very much. We didn't see them in kind of a normal setting this year because they had so many injuries. Ja Morant missed, 73 games this year. Brandon Clark, only played in 6 games. Marcus Smart only played in 20 games. Like they had so many injuries. Parker Flemming, who joined me in the last segment, said that they played 34 different guys this year. Okay, like they just had injuries everywhere. And so I went back and I was just looking at old tape and looking at old numbers for the Grizzlies. This team plays fast. Okay, they were fourth in pace in the NBA in the 2021 to 2022 season at 100 possessions per game. 2022 to 2023, they were 8th in pace at 101 possessions per game. Like they want to play fast. They want to play up and down. And this is why I said to kind of open this segment that I think they would have been better off finding a more athletic big than Zach Edey that can really kind of run up and down with the rest of these guys. Because look, like Ja Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark, like all 4 of those guys are great athletes who want and need to play fast and out in the open floor. Zach Edey isn't that. I think he just would have been better suited to play for a team that plays at a slower pace. That being said, like Zach Edey can play on a team that plays at a faster pace. I just think he's better suited to play for a team that plays a little bit slower. Okay, like the Grizzlies clearly want to play up and down, and Edey's capable of doing that, but I'd like to see him on a slower pace team just because he's not an elite athlete. Okay, and I'm interested to see kind of the defensive side of the ball. That's really where I think most of the questions are, because I think people understand that if Steven Adams can contribute and be a good NBA player for the Memphis Grizzlies, then so can Zach Edey, even if all he does is set screens and roll to the rim and rebound. And watching Edey, the defense is the question. Now, he's going to have to play drop coverage. He's not great on the perimeter, all that kind of stuff. Like, look, there's like 3 7-footers in the league who can play defense on the perimeter. Okay, so like I'm not like that shouldn't be a knock against Zach Edey. Okay, there's like 3 guys that can do it. Rudy Gobert has won 4 Defensive Players of the Year, and guess what? He cannot do. He cannot defend the perimeter. Can't, but he still won 4 Defensive Players of the Year because he's big and he's athletic and he can protect the rim. Okay, that is what Zach Edey needs to do, and that is what I'm interested in seeing if he can do. Like I know when guys drive straight at Zach Edey, he's going to be fine. Okay, because just watching him in college, when guys drove at him, like he didn't really have to move. He could just be 7'4" with a 7'11" wingspan and just be in the way and alter shots. He'll be able to do that in the NBA, but not to as great of an extent, just because guys in the NBA are bigger and more athletic and more explosive and all those things. But the question is, can Edey show and then recover to contest a different shot at the rim? That is the thing that I want to see from him. Can a guard come off a screen, drive at Edey, throw a little drop-off bounce pass, and can Edey recover back to get a good contest on the shot? That's what the best shot blockers and rim protectors in the NBA do. That's what Wemby does. That's what Rudy Gobert does. That's what Chet Holmgren does. They're able to show and then get back and still get a good contest. That is the question I have for him on the defensive end of the floor. Can't wait to watch him play for Team Canada this summer in the Olympics. I think a lot of the questions that we have about him are going to be answered as we watch the Olympics unfold over the course of the summer. Once again, offensively, he'll be fine. If Steven Adams can help the Grizzlies on offense, then so can Zach Edey, even if it's just setting screens and rolling to the rim. The other guy that played basketball in the state of Indiana this year, Khalil Ware. Cannot wait to see what he looks like in Miami. He couldn't have gone to a better place than the Miami Heat. Okay, Jay Billis mentioned on the draft show last night that there have been questions and issues with Khalil Ware's effort. That's why he left Oregon. That's why he didn't really play at Oregon. The effort just wasn't there. Now, Miami, you better show up with some effort, because if you don't, Eric Spoelstra will get in you. Pat Riley will get in you. Jimmy Butler will get in you. Okay, like heat culture, that is a real thing, and it will have an impact on Khalil Ware. Okay, like this is a real thing in the NBA. Like the best player has to set the tone, and Jimmy Butler sets a tone that is competitive and hardworking. And if Khalil Ware doesn't fall in line, he'll quickly realize that he's not going to get to play. So that is the kind of guy that he has to be. He's also going to get to play alongside with Bam Adebayo. Like there's definitely lineups where they could put Khalil Ware at the 5 and Adebayo at the 4 just because they're both good athletes. So going to be interested to see how they kind of balance that. Fully expect for Khalil Ware to learn from Adebayo on both ends of the floor. Like Adebayo, great defender, that cannot be disputed offensively. Good mid-range jump shooter, finishes around the rim. Great passer as well. They run a lot of offense through him at the elbow. Like there are things that Khalil Ware is going to learn just from playing alongside Bam Adebayo. And if Khalil Ware can continue to shoot the basketball the way that he did at IU this last year, 40% from 3. I know he only took like 1 a game, but still like the touch is clearly there. Like if he can continue to do that, like he's going to be a good NBA player. He's going to be in the league for 7 or 8 years. That was my take coming into the draft. And then I look up and it's like, oh, Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, one of the guy. I feel great about this take now, right? Because look, Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, I would say those guys are not dumb basketball guys. Those guys know what they're doing. And for Khalil Ware, he's going to play alongside Adebayo, but he's also going to get to share the floor with offensive guys like Jimmy Butler, who's a good passer, who's going to find Khalil Ware in spots where he can score. He's going to play alongside Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez, 2 guys that, can definitely score the basketball, but are also willing passers. Okay, like those 3 guys and Bam Adebayo are all going to set him up to score in different spots. And, Khalil Ware's job is going to be pretty easy. Protect the rim on defense, set good screens, roll to the rim, and occasionally pop out and hit a 3. Like he can do all of those things right now, like as of today, and he's 20 years old. Like he's only going to improve and get better. And he landed in a perfect spot in Miami that's going to hold him to a high standard. So, and he's going to find success during his time in Miami because of that. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to get into the Knicks a little bit. They made some big moves. The Pacers have 3 draft picks tonight. I'm going to talk about what they could do. And the Indiana Fever go on the road to take on the Seattle Storm. All that coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, wrapping up on a beautiful, beautiful Thursday. We had some rain yesterday, but it looks great outside today. May have to go play some pickleball or something tonight. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. If you missed any part of the show, feel free to go back to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Search for The Real Jonathan Show, and it should pop up. You can listen to everything that I covered. You can listen to my interview with Parker Flemming. That'll probably be up on the YouTube page at some point today as well. It was great. Talked a lot of Zach Edey to the Grizzlies, Khalil Ware to the Miami Heat. And now I have to talk about how the New York Knicks have gotten better. Okay? OG Anunoby re-signs $42 million a year to stay in New York to play with the New York Knicks, as I predicted, saying he'd get anywhere from $30 to $40 million a year. 42 a year over the next 5 years is insane. Feels like a bit much for OG Anunoby, but when you're only paying Jalen Brunson $25 million next year, you can afford to overpay OG Anunoby. When you're only paying Mikal Bridges about $25 million, you can afford to overpay OG Anunoby. Like that's a player in OG Anunoby that's going to continue to help the Knicks. He had several bright spots during those playoffs. Game 2 against the Pacers was the one where he went absolutely nuts, hurt his hamstring in that game, and missed pretty much the rest of the series. But it's a good player who's going to help the Knicks, potentially compete for a title, which is weird. Like, I'm 23 years old, and this is the first time in my life that it actually seems like the Knicks are good enough to win a title, which is interesting because apparently New York's supposed to be the mecca of basketball. It's supposed to be where basketball happens, but it's been a long time since they were good enough to actually be at this level where we're talking about them like they're title contenders. And part of that is because they also went out and they pretty much went all in. They sent 4 first-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets, in return for Mikal Bridges, another fantastic two-way player. Okay, this is another guy who defends the crap out of the basketball. That is what Mikal Bridges does. He's one of the best defenders in the league. And I said, after the Celtics won the title, and they opened at plus 300, they were heavy favorites to repeat as champions next year. I said on this show, The Real Jonathan Smith Show, that teams are going to get better. Okay, it is incredibly difficult to repeat, not only because you have a target on your back, but also because everyone else gets better. The Knicks, over these past 2 days, have gotten way better. Okay, the Villanova Knicks, that is what they will be known as for forever now, or at least until those 4 guys get broken up. The Villanova Knicks and the Boston Celtics are hands down, as of today, because obviously, like, the draft finishes up tonight, free agency is still going on, and, the 76ers have, 9 roster spots to fill. As of today, the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference are the Knicks and the Celtics. Okay? The Knicks have 4 players in Brunson, Bridges, Randall, and Anunoby who can get a shot on their own. That is the biggest thing with this Mikal Bridges trade. Okay, yes, I know that they gave up 4 first-round picks, but guess what? I guarantee you that none of those first-round picks are going to be as good as Mikal Bridges. I guarantee you, because the Knicks are going to continue to be good and continue to win games, which means that they're going to be picking at the bottom of the first round. Okay, so who cares? Okay, would you rather have 4 guys drafted at 25th overall, or would you rather have Mikal Bridges? I would rather have Mikal Bridges, a guy that I know is going to be good for the next several years. Okay, and he's a guy who, in addition to Randall and Brunson, can create for himself or other players. That was the biggest holdup with the Knicks in the playoffs without Julius Randle. It's like Jalen Brunson is the only guy on this team who can go and get a shot on his own, right? But that's not the case anymore. They have Bridges. So that's a huge thing. They're also big. Okay, there are some questions about whether or not Isaiah Hartenstein is going to resign with the Knicks. He's going to. I guarantee you. He seems like the type of guy. Granted, I don't know him. I've never spoken to him, which is given what I've heard him say about really just everything, is he seems like a guy who'd be willing to give up a little bit of money to stay in the right situation. And there have been reports that he might wind up doing that so that he can stay in New York. And I can't wait to see whether or not he does. If he does, then the Knicks will truly check every single box because they will once again be huge on the front line between Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Okay, like they're going to be big. Like they have plenty of shooting. Everyone that they put on the floor is going to be able to play defense because if they couldn't, then Tom Thibodeau wouldn't put them on the floor. Okay, like they're going to be an absolute handful for everyone next year. They check every box. They have plenty of wings. They have plenty of size. They have plenty of shot creators. They have plenty of shooting. They have plenty of players capable of playing defense. The question is, can they stay healthy? And that's the question with every single team. Okay, I think one of my favorite things I heard when I was younger is the best team doesn't win, the healthiest team does. And so if the Knicks can stay healthy, like they're going to be tough. They are now tied with the Denver Nuggets for the second best odds to win the title next year at plus 750. Watch out. High level basketball might be back in New York City, which I kind of hope isn't the case. I kind of like seeing those Northeasterners absolutely miserable, but we'll see what winds up happening there. Day 2 of the NBA draft starts today, 4:00. So much better than 8:00. That's the time it started at last night, and that was awful. Jeez, 8:00. I was like sitting there. My wife went line dancing last night. She was like, Jonathan, do you want to come? And I was like, no, I think I'm going to sit here and watch Adam Silver say names for the next 3 hours. And that's what I did. I sat there and I watched the whole draft. She was out dancing. She came back in at 11. And she was like, this is still going on? I was like, yeah, it's still happening. Adam Silver is still saying names and random guys are walking across the stage. And so like it wrapped up at 11. I was like, I'm going to bed. It was great. But day two of the draft, round 2 of the draft, 4:00 today. Much more reasonable. That is so much better. And the Pacers have 3 picks tonight. They have the 36th pick, they have the 49th pick, and they have the 50th pick. And when it comes to their draft strategy and what they're going to do, there are 2 things that I expect for the Pacers to do tonight. Number 1, I expect them to trade at least one of their picks, if not 2 of their picks, because like this roster is already pretty full. Okay, they've already got several good young players. They don't need any more youth. That is the last thing that they need. So I expect them to move a couple of the picks. Parker Flemming came on earlier at 11:00, and he threw out the idea of what if they packaged all of these second-round picks to move up and draft Kyle Filipowski out of Duke, a big, 6'10", 6'11" guy who can shoot the ball, put it on the deck, pass, just a very complete player. Like, what if they tried to trade up to get him? It's not a bad idea. I don't mind that. I think he fits pretty well what the Pacers want to do going forward, but we'll see what they wind up doing. I personally expect them to draft a wing, and Filipowski's more of a big. I don't know. He's kind of a tweener, but between the two, like he's too small to play center. Don't know if he's athletic enough to play the 3 or the 4. So we'll see what they wind up doing there. But look, the dude can shoot it. And anytime you can add another shooter, I'm not going to say no. When it comes to guys that I hope the Pacers look at, I hope it's either Cameron Christie out of Minnesota, 6'5", 6'8" wingspan, so tall, long, really can shoot the ball. Okay, shot 39% from 3 last year at Minnesota. He's a good passer as well. So offensively, like he fits in perfectly with what the Pacers want to do. They want guys who can shoot the ball. They want guys who are willing and capable passers, and he is both of those things. And then you guys say, well, Jonathan, we need defenders. That's what the Indiana Pacers need. Totally agree. When we look at Cameron Christie defensively, like he has the tools with the length. He does. He's 6'5", 6'8" wingspan. Like that's tall, that's long. The question is going to be the beefiness. Like the kid's only 18 years old, so he weighs 190 pounds. So like he's small. Like he's going to have to put some weight on. But ultimately, like he's athletic enough to play defense. Like there's a lot of defensive upside. So Cameron Christie out of Minnesota, he makes a lot of sense for the Pacers. Wouldn't be surprised if that's who they decided to take tonight, especially with that 36th pick, if that's the pick that they decide to keep. The other player, though, that I want the Pacers to draft, the guy that I think, look, let's be honest, most second-round picks don't make it in the NBA. They just don't. The guy that I want them to take is undoubtedly Keyshawn Johnson. Okay, he played at Arizona last year. He's a little bit older. He's 23, but he's a legitimate wing. Okay, like he's a legit, you can play this guy at the 3 or at the 4 kind of guy. He's athletic. He is 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. Okay, once again, that 6'6" is without shoes on. When he puts the shoes on, he'll be, like 6'8". He shot 39% from 3 last year, and he can defend. Okay, like this dude is a legitimate defender. Okay, he played at San Diego State for 4 years. You don't go play at San Diego State if you can't play defense. Okay, that's just not how that works. Like you have to play defense if you're going to go play for the Aztecs up there. So like there's that. He's actually beefy, right? Because he's not 18. He's 23. Like this is a full grown man. He's 224 pounds. He has the length. He's also quick enough to guard some smaller ball handlers. So like he's a versatile defender. And that is what the Pacers need right now. They need guys who can step out on the perimeter and actually defend the ball. And Keyshawn Johnson is 1,000% a guy who can do that. Wrapping it up here, the Fever also played tonight on the road against the Seattle Storm. They're looking to bounce back after losing their last game. They're playing at 10 o'clock tonight on Prime. Seattle Storm, they're fourth in the league at 10-6. Like this is going to be a good test for the Fever. Fever should be fine scoring the ball. The question is, as always, can they get stops on the defensive end? Thanks for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show today. If you missed it, if you missed the whole thing, feel free to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can find the Real Jonathan Smith Show there, or you can watch the rerun on YouTube. Plan on uploading some clips here in a bit. Coming up, though, here in about 5 minutes, it's the Dan Dockett Show. Can't wait for that. Dan Plesac joining us at 1 to talk a little bit of baseball and plenty of other things. That is coming your way in 5 minutes. Thanks for tuning in. The Real Jonathan Smith Show will be back again tomorrow from 10 to noon, and I will talk to you guys then.